My husband is dead set on naming our baby girl after his best friend who passed away 2 years before I met him, but if she was so important to him, then why didn't I hear about her until I got pregnant? Posted by u/throwaway76932000. Hi, 29F, gave birth to our daughter 3 days ago and somehow we're still arguing about her name. I'm writing this while she's asleep because I can't sleep anyway, and I honestly don't even know if I'm overreacting anymore. My husband, 31M, has wanted to name her Claire for basically my entire pregnancy. He told me it was the name of one of his closest friends who died a few years before we met. I said no almost immediately. Not because I dislike the name, I actually think it's pretty, but because I wasn't comfortable naming our first child after somebody I've never met or even heard of until I got pregnant. I figured he'd be disappointed, we'd throw around a bunch of other names, and eventually we'd find one we both liked. That never happened. Every few weeks he'd bring Claire up again, sometimes while we were already talking about names and sometimes completely out of nowhere. By the end of my pregnancy, I was honestly tired of having the same conversation over and over. The thing that's bothering me now isn't even the name. We've been together for over 5 years, married for 2, and somehow I'd never heard this woman's name until I was pregnant. I've met his parents, his brothers, his college friends, people he's known forever, and nobody has ever mentioned a Claire. I even asked one of his college friends at our baby shower because I thought maybe I'd somehow forgotten hearing about her, and he just looked confused and said he didn't know who I was talking about. Then, after our daughter was born while we were filling out the paperwork, my husband asked one last time if I'd reconsider. I said no, and that's when he told me he'd always imagined naming his daughter after her. I asked why he'd never told me that before, and he just shrugged and said he didn't think it mattered. We've argued about it twice since we got home. He keeps saying I'm making this into something it isn't, but I just don't understand how somebody can matter enough that you picture naming your future daughter after them, yet somehow they never come up in 5 years together. My mom thinks I should let him have the name because it's obviously meant something to him for a long time. My sister thinks that's exactly why I shouldn't. Maybe I'm just exhausted because I've barely slept since I gave birth, but I'm so tired of feeling like I'm missing part of the story. It's gotten to the point where I'm thinking about calling his mom and asking who Claire was because I don't know what else to do. It feels completely out of line, but so does finding out about somebody this important while I'm filling out our daughter's birth certificate. Would I be overreacting if I called her? Update: 2 days later. I wasn't expecting to update this 2 days later, but a lot happened really fast. First, thanks to everyone who commented. A bunch of you told me to talk to my mother-in-law because she'd probably know the answer. I went back and forth on it for a while because it felt weird to go around my husband like that, but eventually I did call her. She asked if I wanted to meet for coffee the next morning, so I did. I honestly thought I was going to leave feeling embarrassed. I figured she'd tell me Claire really was just a close friend and I'd realize I'd let myself get carried away because I'm exhausted and emotional and just had a baby. The first thing she asked me was what my husband had already told me about Claire. I said that she'd been his best friend and he wanted to name our daughter after her. She just kind of looked at me for a second. Then she told me they'd been engaged. The more we talked, the more names came up. His parents knew, his brother knew, and one of his old roommates knew because they'd lived together at the time. Funny enough, it was the same friend who I'd asked at our baby shower. No one had told me anything. Apparently most people just knew he'd been dating someone who got sick. His mom told me Claire was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer not long after they started dating. Things moved fast after that because they knew they probably didn't have years together, so he proposed. She died not long after. She also told me she'd assumed I'd known about all of this for years. When we got engaged, she thought he'd already told me. Same thing when we got married. Same thing when I got pregnant. I call bullshit, but maybe I'm just looking to point fingers. I drove home after that and just waited for him to get back from work because there wasn't any chance I was going to act like everything was normal. I confronted him that night and it went awful. Truly, he acted like an entirely different person. At first he wanted to know why I'd gone to his mom. Then it became that I had no right to dig into his past. Then it became that Claire had nothing to do with our marriage. Then it was that I betrayed his trust by involving his family. It just kept changing. I'd answer one thing and we'd somehow end up arguing about something else. I asked him when he planned on telling me he'd been engaged because we'd already been together for over 5 years, married for 2, and now we had a daughter. He said he always meant to tell me. But he didn't. He never fucking told me, and I'm so angry at how selfish it was. I packed a bag that night and went to my sister's house with a baby. Before people assume we're getting divorced, that's not why I left. I still love this man and we have a child together, I couldn't imagine raising her split in two households. I left because we were both angry and I could tell the argument wasn't going anywhere. My sister's been helping with the baby. Yesterday she realized I hadn't eaten since breakfast and practically shoved a sandwich into my hands because I'd completely forgotten. This whole thing has been exhausting and I haven't slept at all. A few people asked about the birth certificate. The hospital told us we had time to finish the paperwork after we left, so we weren't forced to pick a name before going home. We obviously aren't going to leave it forever, but right now neither of us is in any position to make that decision. My sister started calling her Ellie because she said she felt weird saying the baby all the time, and somewhere over the last day I've started doing it too. I don't know if that's going to end up being her name, but it's the working filler while the shitstorm is ongoing. My husband has been calling and texting since I left. He wants to see our daughter, and we've made that happen because none of this has anything to do with her. Whatever is going on between us, she's still his daughter and he loves her. I don't want people getting the idea that I'm trying to keep her away from him because I'm not. I've seen a lot of comments saying the real issue is that he loved someone before me. It really isn't. If he told me about Claire years ago, I don't think we'd be here. I would have felt awful for him. I probably would have cried hearing what happened, but I wouldn't have held it against him. What really hurts is the lies and the manipulation. But then again, can you even call it lying? It's not like I ever asked him, "Oh, were you married before?" because who the hell asks that? Instead, I found out because he wanted our daughter to have her name, and then I found out from his mother that she'd been his fiancée. That's the part I can't look past. I looked back on my other post and it feels like it was written by someone else. 2 days ago I thought we were arguing about a name. God, I was so naive. I suppose question has turned into, would I be overreacting to leave him over this? I'm certainly mad, but I don't think we're to that point yet, and I don't want that for my baby either. Anyway, that's where things are. Thank you all so much for the support. This has really been a great place to be able to vent and get advice. A very special thanks to all of those who helped me realize I wasn't crazy.